Come on. Good morning, you all. I'm perched somewhat precariously in the the door of the kitchen of the houseboat, and I'm going to be here talking to you, answering your questions. I'm hopefully going to get a shout from Helen, who's inside the house, anytime soon that the tech is working, and then I'll get started. But before I do that, I would just like to say a very, very happy Earth Day 2020 to all of you out there, no matter where you are around the world, no matter where you're tuning in from. Today is a day to celebrate our glorious planet and everything that lives on it. So a big shout out, first of all, to my friends at the Wildlife Trust who have helped support me in this, and also to the guys at the WWF. So they are doing lots and lots of great stuff for Earth Day today. So they've asked me to do some shout outs because they are starting their Learn to Love Nature site on Facebook. And at 11:30 today, they'll be doing a Make Your Own River Puppet segment. So if you've been enjoying doing the makes here on these live Q&As, then tune in at 11:30 to that's UK time to WWF's Facebook site, and they will teach you how to make a river puppet, which sounds absolutely sensational. And then this Friday at 11 a.m., Friday the 24th, they're going to be doing a section of webinar on Latin American freshwater wildlife. They've got an amazing scientist working with them. So yeah, tune in on Friday as well. There'll be lots and lots to find out about. And now I'm going to put on my Scout Necker, because I'm sure a lot of you will know that myself and Helen are proud ambassadors of Scouting. And tomorrow night, as part of the BBC's Big Night In, Children in Need, going to be getting together with some of the other big charity fundraisers. And Scouts are going to walk to the moon. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to go 240,000 miles from the Earth to the moon in our own houses. It's going to be an absolutely incredible event, launched yesterday by Tim Peake and Bear Grylls themselves, who I sincerely hope will be doing it as well. I'm going to be doing it with Helen and the little ones. So I guess that means I've got to do 5 miles. We're only doing a mile each. I should say that right from the start. We're not actually all going to do 240,000 miles. That would be bonkers. Okay, right, so hopefully I'm going to get my live messages will pop up here in a second. I'm going to have to relaunch that because it's not refreshing. I'm sorry that this all seems very amateur sometimes, but as you guys probably know, I'm doing this completely on my own, including processing the questions, doing the cameras, doing the mixing and all of that as well. So if it takes me a little bit of time to catch up, then please forgive me, because I am a bear of very little brain. So while I'm waiting for those questions to come up, let me start with some things that I've had just come in, actually. Where did I put those? Oh, wait 1 second. Got a birthday. There's my questions. So happy 6th birthday to Eli in the Scottish Borders. A happy birthday also, 7th birthday to Griff Proctor, who is in the Highlands. I'm going to say a massive shout out to the Beavers, Cubs and Scouts from 2nd Monk's Path, to Nico and Ari in the Blue Mountains. Amazing. Crumbs, it's been a hard year for you all, but a massive shout out to you all. To Holly and Joe, who want to know what piranhas feed on. Well, that's another perfect opportunity to show you this. What I showed you last time round, a piranha and its amazing teeth. It depends what species they are. A lot of them are cannibalistic. But mostly they will swim in and take sneaky bites out of other fish's fins. And a big shout out to St Anne's Primary and all of the teachers and parents who are teachers and the pupils there, as well as Grace Hall as well. A huge shout out to all of you. Right, let's get started. So I'm going to kick things off actually with a little quiz. This one is quite hard. And today's theme is all about freshwater and freshwater animals, hence all the fresh water behind me. So I want you to identify something. Now, this is quite tricky, so I'm going to leave this running throughout the entirety of this live Q&A. Can anyone out there guess what this is, what freshwater animal it comes from, and what its purpose might be? So I'm going to leave this running throughout the duration of this Q&A. Anyone out there who can get this, I will be super, super impressed. I'll give you a clue. It's not from the UK, not from this country, but it does come from a freshwater animal. Anyone guess what that might be? So, any of you guys who've been following these live Q&As over the last 5 weeks will know that I have just started now putting up cameras in and around my garden and on the river as well, to try and get a sense of what's happening as spring is springing right here. So let's start off with the swans, because they have been, as you know, nesting in our gardens the last few years. They're super, super friendly, these swans, and they've become very used to Helen and I. And unfortunately this year, as we have our 3 youngsters, we can't really have them nesting on the lawn. You know, they're big animals. They can be, as you can see with this one, sweeping its wings as it's coming onto land. They could be quite dangerous to the youngsters. So what I've done is I've cordoned off a portion of the garden which they have access to. And you can see that they have started half-heartedly gathering some sticks up, but they're kind of just moving stuff around. I mean, this one here is like moving the feed bowl that I used to give them their breakfast in. They're moving stuff about, moving it backwards and forwards, but not as yet really starting to make it into an actual nest. And I don't know where this is going to go, to be honest, because, you know, we're already at a reasonable time in the season. I would have expected them to have a nest by now. It's entirely possible that they're just not going to get round to it this year. There has been the first year that they came into our garden, they did exactly the same. They made a rubbish nest, and then they didn't have any eggs and there was no breeding success. So we'll see. You know, I intend to be here for a few weeks more, bringing you updates of what's happening with our swans. Fingers crossed they decide to actually have their youngsters in our garden. Okay, let's go to some questions. So Finley, who's 6, asks, how does salmon get the speed up to jump up waterfalls and rapids? Stevie, who's 7, and Meggie, 5, from Nailsea, ask how salmon know how to get back to their spawning site. Archie, 11, from Shropshire, wants to know if fish have a sense of smell. And Rocco and Jonty and Stroud want to know how many sea creatures can move upriver and live temporarily in fresh water. So they're kind of all part of the same whole. The salmonids, as a group, that's a kind of fish. A lot of them have the ability to live in seawater and then move up into freshwater to spawn. And you particularly think of the big salmon, you know, the chinook and the pinks and the chum, as swimming sometimes thousands of miles upriver in order to spawn. How they find their way back to their spawning sites? Well, there's Archie there asking about sense of smell. That is really important. The fish is able to smell the river that it was born in, from the very precise molecules that are being swept downstream and out to sea from that stream. They're also able to navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. How do they swim so far upriver, and how do they jump up rapids and weirs and waterfalls? Well, a lot of it's down to the fact that these fish, once they spawn, that's it for them. That's going to be the end of their lives. They just wither away. And in the process of migrating upstream, back up to where they are going to spawn, all of the rest of their body does what we call atrophying. It starts to fade away. So they lose most of their digestive system. They don't really tend to feed when they're heading upriver to their spawning ground, and they become just these swimming, breeding machines where all really their body is doing is it's just a muscle to drive them upstream to find their safe places to spawn. Jesse asks, what's the difference between venom and poison? Venom has to be injected, poison has to be ingested. The way you remember it is if an animal bites you and you die, then it's venom. If you bite an animal and you die, then it's poison. Loads and loads of questions coming in here. What is the biggest freshwater creature about? From Toby, aged 5 at Lossiemouth. Lossiemouth! That's where Helen's rowing partner's from. I've got quite a few people asking that same question, actually, about the largest freshwater animal. Ben from Dorking wants to know. Finn from Bromley in Shropshire. And Tom, aged 7, what's the biggest thing you've seen in freshwater? And Max Brower, aged 8, also, what's the biggest animal that lives in freshwater? Well, the biggest freshwater fish is the Beluga Sturgeon, although again it's an animal that can spend a lot of time out at sea. But those are huge fish which can get up to 6, maybe even 7 meters in length and weigh well over a ton in weight. The freshwater stingrays, particularly the ones found in Southeast Asia and Indochina, again can be over a ton in weight. And then you've got things like the alligator gar and the arapaima, and those other big freshwater fish as well. Almost all of them are critically endangered. They're endangered because our freshwater ecosystems are under so much pressure, and in the case of the beluga sturgeon, because of overfishing for caviar. This is an animal that matures late, and caviar are, in some cases, they're worth more than gold for their weight. So these animals have been hunted almost to extinction. Millie and Florence Blease in Cornwall. Hello, you all. I am bored, says, hi, Steve. Nice kitchen. Well, thank you very much. I like it quite myself as well. Georgina, age 9, asks, are all adders venomous? Yes, they are. Adders are vipers, viperids. They have hinged fangs, and yes, they are all venomous, although not necessarily dangerously venomous to us as human beings. Harry and Sam Aston for the hooray for all Marlowe twins. Yes, I totally agree with you, from Dad, aged 41 and a quarter. I have actually got a little bit of footage. I was talking there about salmonids. Let me show you some lovely stuff sent in by my local wildlife trusts of one of our native salmonids, the gorgeous brown trout. Look at this. These brown trout are primarily freshwater animals, but the exact same fish can be called a sea trout if it does travel backwards and forwards from sea ecosystems. And look at it, it's got this glorious spots covering its body, a really, really beautiful fish, and one that we have right here in the UK. Okay, so I've got my son Bruce Wayne loves your shows. He's got 9 African land snails. If your name is really Bruce Wayne, then you are my new hero. And I haven't got 9 African land snails. I've only got the one, and that obviously is not a live one. And that's teeny tiny. They get to be absolutely gigantic. But yeah, Bruce Wayne, absolutely amazing. What a great name. And then the next person is called Sam Jackson. If you're Sam L. Jackson, then you're my new hero as well. Okay, right, this is a great question. So Sam asks, hi Steve, now that a vast amount of people all over the world are staying home, not using cars, has the science community collated data on the environmental impact, and has the lack of people or traffic reduced the damage? I've got something very similar from Hamish in Cumbria, Joseph Williamson in 10. With the lockdown, will there be a wildlife explosion of breeding in the wildlife? Jack 11 and Jessica 7 from Clipston want to know what the main threats are to freshwater ecosystems. Okay, so I can kind of run all of those together. In terms of the positive outcomes for wildlife from the lockdown that we're seeing now. No, there hasn't been any real scientific data done on what the positive effects are, because quite simply, scientists are not out there doing the work, and it will take a long time to actually bring back the real data about the positive effects that it's had. I can say from my personal experience that here on this river, where I've been paddling for the last 20 years, and I've been living for the last 6 years, that the effects are astronomical. And I've actually been filming some of that this week. So let me show you a little bit of what I've seen here on my river. So these are great crested grebes. They are beautiful, beautiful birds that a few weeks ago would have still been courting, doing a glorious courtship dance, but now they are nesting. Both the males and the females, this is really close, this is just 100 metres up the river from where we are right now. Both the males and the females are involved in this nesting. And I think pretty soon they are going to have youngsters. Look at where that nest is. That nest is right down on the water. It is at water level. And that's the same for many of the breeding birds around here. Now, a little bit later on, you can see this was filmed last year. That is a grebe with its youngsters sitting on its back. Once they're like that, they are under the protection of the mother, and their main problem is going to be predators. But the grebes and the coots, as this bird here, which again nests down at river level, are right now, at this time of year, very, very vulnerable to river traffic. So I would say that on this portion of river, probably 70% of the mortality of young birds comes from boats. It comes from river boats, particularly big, fast motorised boats coming up and down, going too fast and creating wake or wash. If that happens early in the season, then it washes the nests away and the birds just build up again. If it happens later in the season, when the youngsters are up and about, then they just bob up and down the waves, no problem. If it happens when the eggs have been laid or when the eggs are hatching, then just one boat can wipe out a whole nest, and a big hot weekend with loads of boats has a huge negative effect on the birds. Right now, there's nothing. There's no motorised boats here at all. And I've seen more nests up and down here than I would expect to. I've seen the birds nesting earlier than I would expect to. And I think that this could be the best year we've ever had for birds like grebes and coots that are down at water level. I don't know if you can hear that behind me. That is the terns, the common terns. They've only just come back, and they're right now flying along this stretch of river. Absolutely brilliant, and a perfect punctuation to what I was talking about there. So the last question, the main threats to freshwater ecosystems. Well, apart from what I was talking about, boat traffic and the pollution that comes with that, the other threats to freshwater ecosystems are plastics. So you have not just the obvious bottles floating along in the water, but also microplastics and microfibers, which can be washed out from our washing machines. Pollution, runoff, rubbish, and then just overuse, just too many boats going up and down. All of those things have slowed to nothing right now. So for the freshwater, this has been a magnificent break. And obviously, I don't want to talk too much about the positivity of a time when so many people are struggling, but I think it is going to be a break for wildlife, and I really hope that it has long-reaching effects. Okay, let's go to some questions. I should just recap. The very, very first thing I did was this. So this is my question to you all. Does anyone out there know what this is, what freshwater animal it comes from, and what it does? A little clue. It is not from here in the UK. Some more, what's the biggest freshwater creature? So they said Beluga Sturgeon. What have we got? I think actually let's go to a little quiz. We will do a sound quiz. Let's do a sound quiz. Not done that for a while. Oh, actually, I said I'm going to do that, but I think I might have a visitor. Hello. So this, coming up behind me right now and swimming too low for the shot. Where are you? No, just gone past. Oh, what a shame. That was actually one of my swans. They used to come here for their breakfast at the back door. Okay, so I'm going to play you some sounds of British birds that are very much connected to fresh water, and let's see if you can come up with some answers for me. So, the first one I'm going to play you is a bird which usually lives on fast-flowing water and sounds like that. So not only does it live on and around little waterfalls and fast-flowing streams here in the UK, but sometimes it even goes into and under the water to hunt for its food. Okay, my next freshwater animal is a bird of prey, a migratory bird of prey that catches fish when it is on the wing, snatching them from the surface of the water beneath. Can anyone tell me what that is? And my third, okay, so this is much more common. This is one that I'm guessing anyone who's here in the UK and spends any time near the water will have seen. And they bob up and down near the edge of the water, possibly to mimic the movement of flowing water or potentially to attract their prey. And the way that you remember this sound is, it is saying the London area of Chiswick. So we have this bird that dives under the water, this bird, which is the bird of prey, and Chiswick. Okay, right, I'm going to come back to that in just a second, as soon as I've managed to get some answers up. There's a little bit of a lag on my answers here, so I might have to just restart that and see if I can get some questions up. Thank you so much to all of you who are shouting out from all over the world. Lots and lots of people coming in with questions coming in from Australia. Thank you to all my friends out there in Australia. I'm still desperately hoping to be able to come out and do my live tour there next year in January and early February. But who knows? You know, it's obviously very, very difficult times. So you know, I really can't promise yet that we're going to be out there. But if we are, we will do our level best to get to as many parts of the country as we possibly can. I'm still struggling with my live questions. I'm afraid they are just not popping up. I'll have to restart that again. I know that this doesn't make great television, watching me struggling with my IT, but that is just one of the problems of these live broadcasts. Okay, let me move on to some different questions. So Jilly, who's 7, Nicola Mantega, Ava and Rafe want to know, where do butterflies go in the winter? Well, butterflies have lots of different strategies for dealing with the winter. So they can hibernate as a chrysalis or moss as a pupa, or they can hibernate as adult insects. So if you're in your shed and you find what looks like a completely dead butterfly, don't throw it out or anything, because it is possible that it could be, you know, completely fine and just hibernating. And then when it comes to the spring, they wake up and you see them a lot. Particularly the early flyers could well be butterflies that have been hibernating. Have I got my swan behind me right now? Can you see him? Hey there. Will you just at least make a bit of an appearance? Make a bit of an appearance? So there we are. That is our female or pen swan. And you can see how kind of driven they are by the fact that I basically give them their breakfast every morning. And so she's there right now going, "Oi, where's my Weetabix?" I don't feed them Weetabix. What else have we got? Yes, Taylor would like to know what flowers would be good to encourage butterflies to the garden this spring. Well, buddleia is an absolute classic. Things like red valerian and marjoram and knapweed. Also, remember, of course, we do have our wonderful bug attractors, which I showed you how to make last week. And I had lots and lots of people getting in touch saying that they themselves have made butterfly feeders. Let me show you a few of those now, because they are absolutely beautiful. Hundreds and hundreds of you getting in touch to say that you have made butterfly feeders and hung them up in your garden, which is just so wonderful. Thank you all so much for getting involved. I love that you're doing these wildlife makes, and don't forget, if you're really into the wildlife makes, to tune in to the WWS channel at 11:30 to find out how to make a water puppet. I have a quick wildlife make for you now. This is not one which is going to take you a huge amount of time, but it is something which has brought me a huge amount of joy over the years, and it's simply learning how to take an imprint of a wildlife footprint. So until quite recently, whenever we did this, we would just have done it with plaster of Paris, which you essentially mix up with water and then you pour into a mould and you get something like that. That is not an animal's handprint, that is a handprint of Logan, my baby son. You can see it's a negative imprint there. Nowadays, we don't really tend to use that when we're away because it's quite messy. So instead, we use something called polymorph, which is the little tiny plastic beads. And if you pour hot water onto them, then they start to become malleable and moldable, and you compress them into a print and create a permanent impression like that. Isn't that awesome? That is my first ever jaguar. After months and months of searching, we managed to find jaguar, we got them on camera traps, and it was absolutely awesome. We also managed to make a track like that. But the other thing that I've learned from having babies is that for next to nothing, you can get this stuff. So this stuff is moldable. It costs about £1.50 a packet. It's primarily designed for people to get, handprints and footprints from their youngsters, but it does work on animal tracks as well. So if you get a good, dense, deep track that's, something that maybe you don't know what it is, or maybe you do know what it is and it's exciting, mulch this stuff up, squeeze it into the track, and then leave it for a couple of hours and it solidifies, and you've got that forever. And that is a remnant of the track of an animal that you may well have seen passing through your patch. I don't know if we've got any response yet on my mystery print, because unfortunately my questions are still not working. I'm kind of hoping that maybe Helen will run down with some answers sometime soon, but she's got 2 babies strapped to her front, so that could be quite tricky. I tell you what I could do actually is I could just try and go to YouTube and look direct. Let's see if I can do that. Just talk amongst yourselves while I'm doing this, you all. Right, let's take some more questions. So Reese6 asks, if a polar bear met a grizzly bear, would they fight or would they be friends? And Eden Bunce says, we've heard of pizzly bears, but are there any other animals that can mate to make a new species? Well, 2 things there. So, polar bears and grizzly bears are more and more coming into contact with each other, particularly driven by climate change and the fact that essentially these bears are having to change their environments, and sometimes they are hybridizing to form so-called pizzly bears, which is the most incredible name. But it's not a new species yet; it is a hybrid. So the definition of species is 2 animals that can mate together to provide offspring that itself is viable, that itself can breed to provide offspring. That's not yet true with pizzly bears, so they're not a new species. Helen, any luck?
There were so many guesses. It was scrolling.
Oh my goodness, it's just popped up. I've got one. Sam Rodenhurst. It is a catfish, pectoral, spine, and Barry Eaton as well. Amazing!
There's some other guesses there.
Oh, we've got lots of guesses. We've got stingray spine. It actually looks very, very like a stingray spine. So Jilly, Nagna, or Naina, Grace, and Roundsley, you all get a prize from me because you are close enough. Oh wow, there are so many guesses here. Anna Chapman, duckbill platypus barb, no, but good guess. Daniel Carroll, swordfish, alligator gar from Sirius Thunder. Gillian, and we've got Kelly Hayward, Steve Nichols, Zed Huss, Reese Lover, Michelle O, Neil Taylor, Diane Telfer, Hannah Collinson, Nab, Matt, Louisa, Anthony, and Lucas all said a sawfish. No, I mean a sawfish rostrum is way, way bigger than that. But amazing guesses. Okay, I haven't done badgers yet. No, we've got to quickly do badgers. So, as I was saying last time, I have been putting up my cameras, and I have had camera traps up on the local badger sets. We've got some amazing results. So I've struggled a little bit in that the vast majority of my results have been wabbits. It seems that most of where the badger sets were last year has been taken over by badgers and by rabbits, and they're living there now. I've also had my cameras triggered lots and lots by these two roe deer who've been coming through, just nosying in between all of my camera traps and triggering them over and over again. The female there, or doe, being followed by the buck here. And I love the dainty way that they step over the wire as they walk. We've had muntjac deer as well, wandering through the camera traps, lots and lots of those, and foxes. So there are clearly lots and lots of foxes on my local patch, and I've had those bounding through the camera traps lots and lots. But it's been quite tricky trying to get our old friend the badger. I've not been really sure why, but it seems that maybe they have my local badgers dispersed and gone elsewhere. I have, though, managed to find one little family, and as I showed you last week, they definitely have a youngster, a cub. But this week, I think I might have made a slight breakthrough. So I'm beginning to learn their rhythms. They are leaving pretty much as the sun sets and coming back to the earth or set just about sunrise. And we have a male and a female, but not just one cub, but two, which to me is just absolutely wonderful. I thought it was a little bit strange that there was just one cub wandering around on its own, but now I'm getting to see loads and loads and loads of footage of these two cubs playing with each other, spending much more time on mucking about than they are on actually feeding. And they're using one particular set entrance. They've kind of not used any of the others. So I can now focus my camera trapping on this one spot, and hopefully over the next few weeks I'm going to be able to show you much, much more about... Oh! Yes, Logan's been watching the badgers as well. So hopefully I can show you lots more of how our badgers are doing, because they're clearly having an awful lot of fun. And that's the big male there coming back into the set very first thing in the morning. I'm sure you can hear. Does Logan want to come and say hello quickly? Logan absolutely loves the badgers, don't you? You love the badgers, don't you?
Yeah.
Where do the badgers live? No, the den's the fox, isn't it? Where does the badger live?
Yeah.
The badger lives in the set. He knows that. Okay, I've had lots and lots of people asking me what temperature the water is, and if I would be prepared or brave enough to hop in. So I'm going to finish today's live lesson by doing just that. But before I do, I'd like to wish you all a very happy Earth Day 2020. I'd like to shout out again to all the scouts who tomorrow evening will be walking to the moon, 240,000 miles. All of you out there, please maintain your love for nature wherever you are in the world, because when all of this craziness is over, we are going to need nature more than ever, and nature is still going to need us. But for now, until next time, Els, can you take that? This is me, Stevie B, saying, see you next time. Oh, it's really cold. Oh, it's really cold. Oh.